The lights were bright in the studio, not harsh, but warm, like a glow that invited confidence. For Tim McCarthy, this was a dream he'd carried for years. The stage of the chase, the buzzer, the red phone of the chaser, the noise of the audience, all humming together like wires in a circuit. He pulled in a breath as the host introduced him. He smiled quietly. "Let's do this," he told himself. He wasn't just any contestant. At 64 years old, Tim had spent decades in front of chalkboards, then boardrooms of schools. He'd seen thousands of students walk through his school's doors, watched them struggle, watched them triumph. He'd once placed a bet, just a small, tongue-in-cheek gesture, with his pupils. If their GCSE results rose, he'd share the winnings. They rose. He did. That had been classic Tim. Belief, risk, reward. Now he faced a different kind of risk. On national television, against the chaser. But he didn't see it as risk. He saw it as opportunity. He'd always been fascinated by knowledge, in science, in ideas, in people. He had achieved his physics degree by 19. He'd built schools, inspired students in the UK and abroad. He had charisma, humility, a mind that never stopped asking questions. People said he was brilliant. His wife said he was the most clever man I ever knew. What few people knew was that Tim had been suffering, quietly. He had months to live, he'd been told. Terminal illness. But he kept it from the producers of the show. Why? Because he feared they'd say no. He'd worked too hard to let that stop him. He didn't want his illness to be what defined him. He only wanted to be the guy who pressed the buzzer, who answered the question, who won. The studio door opened, and Tim stepped inside. He heard the cheering, felt the swell of energy. His teammate, Lorcan, stood beside him. Two women contestants, Shireen and Julie, were already in the tank. The host greeted them, explained the game. Tim's heart pounded, but his face remained calm. He had come to enjoy this. Round 1. Tim answered one question. 1,000 pounds. Not much, but he'd warmed up. He took a deep breath. Round 2. The offer came. 95,000 pounds. He weighed it. He gambled. He pressed the button. He took it. The audience gasped. It might be big. It might be too big. But Tim didn't flinch. He knew his path. Final round. With Lorcan, Tim faced the chaser, that red phone, the ticking clock. Every question landed like a frame in the film of his life. He recalled standing in front of his class, urging students, predicting progress. He thought of every late-night marking, every hopeful glance at exam papers. He remembered that moment at the pub with friends. "We'll watch together," he'd said. "You'll see me up there." A quiet man, he used to keep others guessing. He never told them how he'd done. "My secret," he told them. "My moment." The final buzzer sounded. They'd won by 1 second. 1 second. The audience erupted. The studio lights blinked. The camera zoomed in on Tim. He raised his fist on the edge of joy and relief. 1 second. The odds had turned in his favor. The prize? 100,000 pounds split between him and Lorcan. Suddenly, all those years of teaching, of stakes and dreams, coalesced into this moment. Back in Tyldesley, Greater Manchester, at the Collier's pub, his friends and family gathered to watch the broadcast. They filled every seat. They raised their glasses. They cheered. Yet somewhere in the corner, there was a quiet sadness. He could not fully enjoy this win. He'd been gone for weeks already. His desk at the school was empty. His stories unanswered. The laughter cut short. The applause echoed for someone absent. But in that crowd, the story shifted. It was no longer just about the game show. It was about memory, longing, celebration. For Tim, the win was part of his bucket list. He said so in the interview. "I'm here for fun," he'd said. "I genuinely don't want the money." Yet the prize mattered. It meant that he had beaten something bigger than the chaser. He had beaten expectation. He had beaten silence. He had leaped. In the weeks before, when his body weakened, he thought often of legacy, of the corridors of the school, of the students he'd nudged forward, of the formulae scribbled on boards at midnight, of the bets and the celebrations. And now, the stage, the viewers, the jackpot. He had placed his bet on himself. The night his episode aired, the room at the pub rose when his name flashed on the screen. His widow Rachel wiped away tears. Friends toasted him. "He was a brilliant friend with a brilliant mind," said one. And though they were watching a recording, they felt his presence. He was there. He had done it. In his final reflections, Tim didn't think about the men's prize. He thought about the quiz show as an extension of what he was: educator, challenger, thinker. He knew that knowledge isn't just what you know, it's what you share. It's the courage to confront the unknown. And in that moment on the chase stage, he faced something unknown and came out victorious. After the cameras turned off, after the lights dimmed, the world paused. The story was bittersweet. He won big, but he could not partake. He fulfilled his dream, but it was observed, not lived. And yet, the impact persisted. In pub cheers, in social posts, in stories told in classrooms, that's who he was. His colleagues said, "He gave a bit back." His students said, "He believed in us." His friends said, "We'll never forget that punch-the-air moment." The television lights may fade, the credits roll, and the studios clear out. But for those who knew Tim, the moment will always shine. He walked onto a stage knowing his time was finite and left behind a flash of brilliance, winning against the odds, inspiring those who watched, and reminding us that life's questions are worth betting on. 1 second can change everything. 1 answer can light a path. And so the fans watched, with tears and applause, hearts heavy and uplifted. They saw not just a contestant, but a man who dared to answer one more question, who stepped up to the buzzer, who accepted the quiz card that said, "Are you ready?" And he said yes. If you like, I can craft a version aimed at social media readers with shorter sections, or perhaps a version with journalistic tone. Would you prefer that?